Yeah, now we see it.
Great. All right. I'm going to move you guys over here. All right. So now here's that bow. Now we're going to learn how to think about our teacher anticipatory web. It's our curriculum guide. We want to be able to now distinctly put together the standards that we want to teach and the activities that will help us teach those standards, which in turn teach the concepts. So where might this fall when we think about the phases? At the beginning of a project, so when you do the project approach, there are 3 phases. We have phase 1, and that's what you guys are really been focusing a lot on. And the reason why we do so much focusing on this is because when teachers are actually doing the project approach on their own, this is always the most challenging part. It's always topic selection. Every time a teacher might have a challenge, it's always because they're questioning, is this the right topic? Am I picking the right topic? Are the children really interested, etc.? So we complete this anticipatory web here, and then we're ready to provide focusing activities. If we can do this in a relatively good fashion or amount of time, then we get the focusing activities where we can really help the children gain interest. Okay? All right, whoever has the dog barking may have to mute for a little bit. Okay, so hopefully now you can see the authentic learning experiences engage children slide. Is that the slide you see?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so here we are. We're going to tie it up in a bow. So if we were in the classroom together, this is where I would have drawn a bow. And I want all of you to, on your notes, if you're taking notes, because you're gonna do this today. You're gonna draw your bow, and you can go ahead and take the notes of, on the left side of the bow, that's going to be your concept. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a specific example. And then on the right side is going to be the curriculum goal or the standard. We're going to use a DRDP measure. It's the same thing. It's a standard. And then you have the tie, this part of the bow that hangs down. And you're going to see the left side is where we brainstorm. What's the teacher going to do? And then the left or the right side is what are the children going to do. So when we brainstorm this, we actually come up with multiple activities that focus on one concept and one standard, which is awesome. It really helps us have multiple experiences that we can plan for children. All right, so as I'm looking at the next slide, again, it's the same. It's saying the same thing here. For the teacher planning part, that's where, let me get my little yellow one. So for the teacher planning, what the teacher's going to do over here, that's where we're thinking about what is the teacher going to bring into the environment, like materials and resources. You just all planned some things with your prop boxes and brainstorm prop box materials. Those are examples of environmental planning. Provocations. A prop box itself can be a provocation. Thinking about balls, bringing in different equipment that might go with balls. Thinking about pizza, bringing in different tools and just presenting them to children, on a special project table. That's a provocation. Sometimes, especially when springtime would come, I would frequently bring in insects or like tadpoles were always spawning around our house. So I would bring in insects or animals that would serve as provocations for children. And then the teacher's also going to ask questions, right? Because one of the things that we're doing, instead of the direct instruction, we are facilitating, right? So we're guiding, we're scaffolding, we're asking questions. And then we want to brainstorm, okay, what are the things that children could do related to the topic and the standards? All right, so we're going to try this out. So my topic is shoes, and I'm going to focus on characteristics of shoes at the beginning of my focusing activities because I really want to build background knowledge of the children. And so I'm going to start with foundational knowledge. I'm actually going to recommend that to all of you to start with some of the foundational aspects of your topic, which usually is types of or characteristics of. This works really well, especially to help you have really good confidence in your first activity. And again, like think about your kiddos, and you'll know when you look at your child web, oh, this child, said 4 or 5 things. This child said 2 or 3 things. So this gives everybody a level playing field when we start with the characteristics. So within characteristics here, see if I pull this open or make it larger, you can see sizes is one of my branches off of characteristics. So I'm going to focus in. I'm focusing in on sizes. Now I want you to think for a second, or you could pull up DRDP if you wanted to. So let me show you how that would look. Hopefully when I do this, you'll be able to see the DRDP. So I actually put in all of this information, all these slides are in session 8, by the way. And I copied the DRDP standards and the early learning standards for you there as well. Can you see me pulling up the DRDP right now?
No.
No? All right. Let me do a new share. All right. So I'm pulling up the DRDP. Remember sizes, right? Sizes is my concept. So I am going to scoot you guys over. There we go. Now I'm going to scroll down to this table of contents, the measures at a glance, and I'm going to go sizes. I wonder what goes with sizes. Well, what subject area does that sound like to you all?
Math.
Math, right? Or maybe science. So, okay, here's cognition. So I look through here. Spatial relationships. Well, maybe size could go with that. Classification. Maybe size could go with that. Number sense and quantity. Maybe size could go with that. Measurement. Measurement sounds like size could go with that. So then what I would do next, in order to pick the one that I'm going to focus on, I'm going to read more about these. So I'm going to look at these page numbers. So and it's color coded, so I know I'm looking for the green section. So I'm going to look at classification. First, it says, child shows an increasing ability to compare, match, or sort objects into groups according to their attributes. Well, that could work. Maybe they would sort shoes based on the size, right? So let me go further, though, because I really am interested in that measurement one. This one says, child shows an increasing understanding of measurable properties, such as size, length, weight, etc. Okay, this is the one that I want to pick, okay? So now that I know that I want to choose that one. Hold on, let me move you guys. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to put, whoops, let me get my typing. Let me be able to type in here. Now it won't let me type. I don't want to draw. It's not going to come out very good. All right, what was measurement? 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put cog 5 and then measurement. I need one of your styluses.
I know.
Okay, so there I've got it, right? I've got the concept. This is the concept that came right from my Anticipatory Web. This is the standard. Now, what could the children do? Thinking about sizes and measurement, what could the children do?
Compare
Measure
different
different size shoes.
Let's say they can measure their own feet.
They could compare, so they can take their shoes right off their own feet in class, right? They can I gotta get a
Can
little,
you like insert a text box?
well, yes, I'm trying to, here, I'll do this. All right. All right, now we can brainstorm. All right, so oops. So we've got compare. Oh, come on, little guy. Now it's not letting me type. Compare their own shoes, sort their own shoes, measure their shoes. What would they measure their shoes with?
You could do like crayons or different like objects from the classroom, like crayons, markers.
And maybe Unifix cubes. So that's all non-standard measurement, right? So when you're looking at pre-K and kindergarten standards in math under measurement, you're going to see non-standard units. When we measure with different objects, that's what that means. And then we might also have, because I think I heard Dina say something about like a ruler, maybe a yardstick, right? We might
string also.
String, yep, that would be another non-standard measure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you get the idea, right? These are lots of things that the children could do. Could they do anything else? Could they record their observations of this?
They can chart it.
They can chart it. They can. They can draw it, right?
They can do like one of those, like, I don't know. We did it last year in Young Learners where it's like a realistic graph. So like we had teddy bears and we just line them based on like clothes versus not clothes.
Like actual teddy bears, like you'd like graph their actual shoes on the ground.
Yeah,
it was a pictograph.
Yeah, they could figure out, you know, who has size 5s, who has size 6s, and you could make a bar graph with with their actual shoes. Absolutely. All right. And I love that idea, by the way. Okay, so we have lots of things, and this is what children can do. That's important that we are just, you know, completely brainstorming all of the actual hands-on things children can do to measure, right? They're learning measurement while they're learning about sizes of the shoes and that there's these different sizes. So then what is the teacher going to do to help build this activity?
You'd have to have all the stuff to measure with. Like you'd have to have all of it prepared.
Supplies for measuring. What else? I heard somebody else say something. If you want children to learn about size, what's the teacher going to do?
Maybe make a concept map.
With the kids?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So like the teacher can talk to the kids about like what they know about sizes. So like, you know.
Yeah. So maybe as an introductory activity, you're a concept map. What do you know about sizes? All right. What else might the teacher do?
Read a book.
What would we want the book to be focused on?
Similar to what you said about non-standard measurements, maybe we talked a lot about Curious George last class, but if there's a book where the character goes around measuring things, that's what you want them to do so it's relatable.
Okay. And in Pete the Cat, he's got several books about shoes, incidentally. There's other books, because again, right, my concept is about shoes and sizes. So yeah, so we find a book that has something related to the concept. Now, what is the teacher, so those are some good things that the teacher's going to do maybe before the actual activity of sorting. Now I want you to think, while this activity is happening, what's the teacher going to do?
ask open-ended questions like, how are you measuring that? Maybe even model it for them at first.
We want them to explore, so we're going to hold up. We're not going to model. Because if we model, then that doesn't show us what they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it doesn't allow the process to be, because really what we want to see is we want to see how are they measuring. And when we look back at the DRDP and you look across that continuum, you'll see how that incremental levels also capture the child's engagement. So if you're wanting them to know sizes, what might you ask? Size is about length, right? This is what we're focusing on, length and width of shoes. What's
Small, medium, large.
Say that again.
Small, medium, large.
So you might ask, which ones are the small shoes?
So they could group by sizes.
They can, and they will do that when you ask the right questions. So the flip side, when Michaela is saying modeling, what we have to do is just flip the switch and think, well, what questions could we ask to provoke that action? So first, we're going to ask the most open-ended question we can. What can we do with our shoes? We have lots of different shoes here in this pile now that we've all taken our shoes off. And we have all these different sizes. I'm wondering about the sizes of these shoes. How can we know about the sizes? Somebody's probably going to say, my size is a size 6. And you'll say, how do you know? And that's when they're going to actually put the measurement part with the numeracy, because they're going to read the shoe size. So that's another thing that we can anticipate children will do. If it's going to let me enter it over here, I can't get that to let me edit it. So you can see how this is coming together, right? So another way we could approach it. Everybody good if I go to the next slide? Yeah, all right. So you can also look at sizes from another way. We could have focused on numeral recognition. So like I just said, children are going to notice that they are a size 6 or a size 5, especially if we brought shoe boxes into school. So another activity, an extension of our first one, could be that I'm going to bring in different size boxes and shoes of different sizes, and then children are going to recognize numbers, right? So they might sort the shoes that match the shoe box and the size. They might write the numbers, maybe their own shoes in that first activity. Excuse me, hold on for a second. In that first activity where they're going to use their own shoes, the following day, we can still use their own shoes to do numeral recognition. So we think about what could the children do for numeral recognition, compare shoes again, find sizes, figure out how to analyze the data. So again, some of the same things you mentioned, graphing and charting, also discussing, right? They're going to talk a lot about it. Then we're going to think about the environment. So we have to have time to really look at the shoes, examine it. We're going to ask questions. Some of the things that you've mentioned, when you pick out a shoe, how do you know how big it is? See, that's a question that really will make children say, oh, well, I can measure it. Or some children will say, well, I can read it. Some children will say, I'll measure it with Unifix cubes and it's 12 cubes long, etc. All right, so you're kind of getting the gist of how we do this with our bow, right? So here's are you ready to try one of yours now? So this will be the hardest part of our face-to-face interaction, because I'm not there walking around over your shoulder looking at you as you're doing this. But what I really want you to do is get that blank. So you're going to start, let me get a blank one up here. Can you see my blank? And you're going to draw your bow. All right, so on your paper, you have your own bow. no matter if you have cookies or pizza or ice cream or balls, look for something that's a concept you've got on your anticipatory web that is going to be some building knowledge, okay? So you're going to put that concept over here. So for example, for ice cream, it might be types of ice cream.
Would textures work?
It could be texture.
Because I kind of already started.
Yeah, good. That's the idea. And so the thing about it is you can start brainstorming and you'll have multiple ones. And then what we can do is we can help order them. So for example, think about what your prop box might be. Sometimes that's helpful. And then you're going to be going right in line and building off of that. If you have characteristics, like characteristics of pizza, different types of pizza, types of balls. Characteristics is also good because characteristics is broad enough that you can talk about the visual characteristics of your items. For cookies, yesterday, somebody else is doing cookies in Warrensburg. Actually, we've got some baking and some cookies, and I remember we came up with a really good one for exploring the ingredients. So when we thought about characteristics of cookies, cookies need ingredients. So that allowed the cookies need ingredients over here on this side. I can't write with my finger very well. This is going to stand for cookies and ingredients. And so then we were able to have nice standards that help us and help children explore the ingredients. So go ahead, start brainstorming.
So I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just got disconnected and I just got back in. So for my, I am doing pizza.
Uh-huh.
And then like for my idea of it, so for like with my prop box, I'm doing like an oven and allowing them to create their own pizzas.
Uh-huh.
You know, so for this, am I able to do like pizza ingredients?
Yeah.
I do that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And then they would just, you want to make sure that they're exploring it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I could do like types of ice cream because I'm kind of confused and stuff because it's like for characteristics, which is what I wanted to focus on. Like there's only so many, like you can't really connect a DRDP standard to like I don't know. I'm like having trouble like trying to figure out how it would match.
For the types for ice cream?
Well, I like for types would it just be like yeah, I'm like for some reason this is so confusing to me.
So what you want to do is you want to think about, all right, so if I am going to focus on, tell me some of your concepts that you have for ice cream. And those of you who are working, you can mute me while I'm answering individual questions or listen, depending. I just don't want it to.
So I have characteristics, accessories, which is what I'm doing for like my prop box and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Types of ice cream, and then like where you get it. So like different stores, different
Uh-huh.
like, restaurants and stuff.
So you could build off of your prop box, Maddie, and do tools. But I also want you to see where types
Right.
fits in. Okay. So types is a lot of times going to be, if you look under classification,
Okay.
you look there. So part of it is when you know the standards, like I know the standards, right? So when you really know the standards, it's going to be like this in your brain. So that's part of why there might be, like this nervousness of how do I come up with this? But by looking and perusing through that front section,
Okay.
that's usually helpful. But let's go ahead and explore if you were going to focus on types. So classification shows the ability to compare, match, and sort objects according to their attributes. So that's where textures and characteristics kind of come into play, because they could sort ice cream based off of, there's soft serve, there's hard, there's homemade.
Would that work for pizza as well?
Absolutely, because they're classifying.
So
like
types, I had like gelato, there's frozen yogurt, there's actual ice cream, there's ice cream like the popsicle, but it's the ice cream, like ice cream bars. So like that, okay.
They can even sort, and and you would have real pictures. So this is where it's hard, because you guys are doing this in a short amount of time. If you were the real teacher, like right now, guys, I'm eating ice cream, but there's so many ice cream projects that we cannot eat enough ice cream to get. I'm like saving containers for you all, real containers. But like we would have parents send in real containers and real items, and then they'd have those objects to sort. You can start gathering some of these, but you can also use real photos.
Okay.
So yeah, because the real picture is good. You don't want to use a worksheet that has little cartoon character cuts. And I will help you print those off, because printing real pictures can be pricey.
Okay.
So when you're planning, and if okay, I'm going to have kids sort these 10 pictures or these 20 pictures, they could be sorting this ice cream by where they get it too. That could even be a further activity out. But does that help in this instance?
Yeah, that makes it, yeah.
Yeah.
So are we actually gonna do this with the kids?
This is your activity 1. Yes.
Okay, because like I was gonna do textures, and then I was gonna have them classify like the classification, but I wasn't for sure on how to do it. But like with my prop box, I'm planning, like I found a recipe on Pinterest to make like Play-Doh ice cream. It looks like real ice cream, but it's...
Did you see me go, what? You were on Pinterest? Michaela,
Yeah.
no,
But
Pinterest.
I don't know how to make ice cream, like fake ice.
What's that?
Like I wanted to see if there was a way to make like fake ice cream, and it's like Play-Doh ice cream, but it has like the consistency and everything of real ice cream.
Right. So if it's fake, then it's not real. So we're not going to simulate contrived or fake. We're going to go for real.
So how can I do that?
So I was gonna do Play-Doh with pizza. Is that a no?
Hold on just a second. So if you're going to use Play-Doh, they can use Play-Doh if it's a visual art standard. If they're going to use the Play-Doh to represent the real object, okay? But for ice cream, Michaela, think about how could they attempt to make real ice cream? Because that's what you're thinking about, right? You were trying to figure out how could they...
Well, I'm trying to think of like how could they classify textures.
Yeah, so how they might have to classify textures by tasting, like taste.
That's what I...
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I put for like what students do. I put students can try, look, or touch different types of ice cream and classify them by their texture, like smooth, crunchy, like lumpy, like
yes.
soft.
And so, one thing I would do for that, I would pick a communication standard. So I'm going to go down to, actually, I think I need to go up. Sorry, I'm going to go up here. Do you know why I'm thinking communication, Michaela, when you said all of that?
Because they can talk about it and like, describe it.
And they have the increasing vocabulary, right? Because and all of that's rich. So that might be a really good one for you to focus on for that, which would be, I think, communication use, the same one that we did for, yeah, here it is. Yeah, so here we have communicates language using complex words and sentences. So then you're really helping the children get to this other end, which goes really well with the kiddos in your classroom too, to support their increasing language.
Yeah, because both of my students don't really talk.
Yeah. So does that make sense with the Play-Doh? Play-Doh is great to use if you're using it for them to build a model. Like they're going to...
Yeah, so I was going to do like the different colors of Play-Doh, and like red would represent either your pepperoni or your sauce for your Play-Doh. Your yellow is your cheese. your browns, your bread. You know what I mean? And then I was gonna bring different colored Play-Doh, so if they wanted to make their toppings, like, or green peppers, or you know what I mean?
So
Black olives.
right. So let me see if I can you see are you looking at my bow right
Yeah,
now?
I could see the DRDP.
So, oh, you see the DRDP?
Hmm?
Hold on, let me pull this up. So if that's the case, and we have characteristics of pizza over here, it actually sounds like you're focused on maybe the toppings. And then over here, we would find the standard, which if you're doing visual art, you're going to look under the visual art standards. And so this is good. Everybody can kind of be listening to this because probably even activity plan 3, most everybody chooses something that's rendering. And when I say rendering, I mean a representation of the child's thinking through art. So Dina, if you had characteristics of pizza and you're focused on toppings, and then what the children will do, you know, you're having them select different Play-Doh to represent toppings. They're building a model with Play-Doh. You could also have a choice. They might draw, you know, with markers, their representation. So that would work. Now, if you wanted it to make sure that you're focused on characteristics, you could even have them label. So whether it's their Play-Doh model or whether it's their drawing, their representational drawing. And what's really great about that is then you have your second area. Because when I flip here in just a minute, once you all have kind of in mind what you want your first activity to be, we'll have 2 objectives because they're integrated. So the first one, just going off of this pizza example, the first objective would go art, and the second then, if I'm going to have them label, well, now I can't type in that. Hold on. This is a little particular today. The second area would be writing, where I'm going to have them label their pizza characteristics. So eventually, you are going to select 2 goals. You'll have your primary area and then your secondary area. How's everybody else feeling about what they might focus on for their first one?
So I have a question real quick.
Okay.
So for like the activities they're doing, so
This is Sarah. I can't see you. Hold on.
So I have my iPad going and my laptop. So you might.
I see you twice.
Because like my webcam on my laptop's not working, but it's weird. So I both. But so for my topic, it's restaurants.
Yes.
And so my topic was going to be types of restaurants, and so I was going to go under the classification. When you do like sorting and matching or drawing representations of different types of restaurants, how do you make that so that it's the kids, so like it's not contrived? Because I don't want to like push an activity on them if that's not what they're interested in doing.
Right. Exactly. And that's a really good way to think about it, right? So you've got the different types of restaurants. And so when you think about different types, you've got fine dining and fast food and drive-through. And so because those are a little more abstract, like they would get that if we could take them there, if we could experience it. There's a couple of ways that you could do it so where it's not contrived. You could have pictures of restaurants that they're familiar with, and then it's going to be more of a discussion and a sort. So they're going to sort the pictures. So you'd have McDonald's, and you'd have Burger King, and you'd have Olive Garden, and because some of those more prominent restaurants, whether they're fine dining, and then actually you could have, it could be a Venn diagram where they're sorting, sit-down restaurants versus, which would be the fine dining. So that'd be your Olive Garden and your Red Lobster, and then you'd have the other ones on the other side. Another way to do it is to weight and have that activity be like activity 2 or 3 when you've had a little bit more time to build the background knowledge. Kids are going to really love to play restaurant. So what's your restaurant prop box going to focus on?
Sorry, I was muting myself. I am not 100% sure yet.
Okay.
Haven't had time to like really think about it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would recommend is that your prop box is going to have restaurant items in there, like the waitress pad and aprons and napkins and placemats and menus. And so then you could build off of there. If you had menus from the different types of restaurants, and then you had your pictures, and you had your pictures labeled, then that would help support the sorting of the different types of restaurants.
Okay.
And then you are going to have to rely, and discussion actually happens a lot, guys. There's actually 5 different structural features of the project approach, and discussion is one of them. Another way to build off of types of restaurants is to then have the children pick 2 or 3 restaurants, and they can survey their friends. Which type of restaurant do you like to go to the most? Do you like to go to Olive Garden, or do you like to go to Chick-fil-A? That's another way where the children are actively gathering information so that they are learning about the different types. And then, of course, in the scheme of things, you're only getting to teach 3 lessons. But in the scheme of things, you'd read books, you'd actually go to a restaurant, you'd go to 2 different types of restaurants, and then they would experience it, and that would help.
So I have a question. So for my whole prop box thing, I'm doing like pizza topping. So I'm kind of going off like the visual arts thing, and I'm going to make it to where they have to like kind of like make their own pizza, and they can like, make all kinds of different pizzas, whatever. So I kind of want to incorporate like writing into it a little bit. But my thing is, like, I've told you about the girl who, like, I asked her to start writing, and she just like broke down. Like, I mean, I think that she's getting better, but at the same time, I don't really want to push it. So would you recommend that I maybe have them draw on a piece of paper their creations and then maybe like write a little bit about it? Or
Yeah, I actually like the fact, Roman, that you're thinking about focusing on that, because she did have challenges with it. Like sometimes, we'll say, oh, we better stay away from this, but really it will be helpful. And if you did the Play-Doh, that might actually be therapeutic. So just to let you know, let me see if you guys can, I'm going to go back to DRDP here for a second. So social emotional development, that might be another area that we could find a connection, especially like when we're doing visual arts, cooperating, working with others, thinking about feelings and behaviors. That might be a particular goal that you would think of for your own child. But then, let me see, Roman, I was going to go to writing. Okay, so here we come to emergent writing. So again, I think this would be another way for you to build. And if they were making their pizza model, you could have little tent cards, and they could label, whether it's cheese, or you could give them the choice. Do you want to label your parts, or now do you want to draw a picture of your model? What is really awesome is having a first time drawing. So even Sarah, now I'm going to go back to Sarah too. Like when you guys are doing this first lesson, if you did a first time a representational drawing, right? Where they're looking at the model, whether it's the McDonald's storefront or, the ice cream truck or the pizza, then they have their representational drawing that they can label. And then you're just looking to see, maybe it's they write pizza, and how great that they write that word. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I think those would be great things to integrate. And then I'll just pull visual art up. It's in the section towards the bottom. Though that art always gets the shaft. That's my joke for the day, guys. Yeah, thank you. All right, hold on. Where is that visual art? Here it is. Okay. So we've got visual art here. So experiments with tools and materials for painting and drawing. You can see how it moves across. So guys, when it comes to, in a minute, we're gonna take these ideas and move them into the objectives for your activity plan. Right up here at the top, where I'm kind of highlighting, can you see that highlighted with my cursor? That's the actual standard. So visual art is the measure that you're working with, like the overarching idea, content area, and then this is the actual standard. So that child engaging, developing skills, expressing self, and increasing creativity, complexity through two-dimensional or three-dimensional art. If you're focused on a model, if they're building a model of their favorite ice cream sundae, if they're building a model of their pizza, if they're building a restaurant model, then you're going to focus on three-dimensional. If they're drawing a representational drawing, meaning they see the picture in front of them of the fire truck and they're drawing the fire truck, that's a two-dimensional piece. What other questions as you guys are coming up with your ideas?
I have one. So I'm just kind of stuck because my prop box is going to be focused on ice cream shop.
Yes.
And everything, but I did this as textures, so I don't know if I should change it and not do textures, or what should I do?
Okay, so if you're focusing on ice cream shop, I would continue building off of that, right? Because there's so many different things, and because they can play, right?
Yeah.
So, if they're going to be working in the ice cream shop, are you going to have them just explore the items of the prop box and play with them open-endedly in your prop box?
Yeah, I was just going to put everything in there and then have them explore, so they could play. They can sit there and just start having an ice cream shop, or
So a couple of things that would be really great ideas to build off of that as your first. A couple of things like thinking about types of ice cream. They could make a menu for their ice cream shop that connects to the types of ice cream. They could, which again, now they can write some of the words, but you're probably going to have to write the majority, right?
Yeah, because one of my kids doesn't write at all. When she writes, it's circles. She writes her name as just circles. Right.
So we just want to give her more experiences to write. So the other thing that we can do is, they can do sociodramatic play. They can set up their ice cream shop, so they can create signs. Menu might be something that we want to work up to, but they could create signs for their ice cream shop, and then role play in it. They can take orders for their ice cream shop. They could also, I'm going back for you, anybody doing ice cream, actually pizza, this counts as well. Actually cookies and balls, this all counts. Also think about doing surveys. When young kiddos do surveys, it's so powerful because they're collecting data, they're having to use language, which especially for all of you, with probably the exception of Roman and Sarah, but everybody at Great Beginnings, you can see the differences between the ways children communicate. Even if you do it as simple as, which one do you like best, pepperoni pizza or cheese pizza? Michaela, you could do building off the prop box idea. You could tell kids, okay, last week I was here and we did the prop box play with their ice cream shop. Now we need to know what kind of ice cream to stock our shop up for our customers. So we need to survey our friends. What do you like best? And so in a real project, meaning not that you're not doing real projects, but if you had more time, you'd allow the kids to make up the survey, but we don't have that kind of time. So you'd make a survey template up for them. You see, they could survey the kids about their favorite ice cream, and then they could come up with how to make those. Activity plan 2 could be how to make those different types of ice cream for their ice cream shop.
So I know that for our whole prop box thing, we have to have national standards as well as state standards. Are these like national standards?
DRDP?
Yeah, or are these something completely different?
Well, if you're using national standards, then you're using Common Core, or you're using like national next generation science standards. Did Dr. Tai specify which national standards?
No, she just told us kind of where to find them, but I can't really find them.
Well, it depends. I would just ask her that clarifying question, because if you're using Common Core, those standards, you may not find pre-K. You won't find pre-K Common Core standards. You'll find them for kindergarten. DRDP is used nationally, so it should be fine to use DRDP and the Missouri Early Learning Standards.
Okay.
All right, so everybody kind of got an idea in their minds? Jaden, you have an idea?
Yeah. Because the little boat thing doesn't have to be about or prop boxes, or you do want it to be more towards the prop box.
So you're just building. The reason why I mention your prop box is you will implement your prop box first, and then implement activity plan 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Boy, I can really hear some feedback from you when you're unmuted. So what is your idea?
Well, for my prop box, what I was gonna do, I was thinking, like how to make cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Like give them like the cooking, like the supplies and everything. But then as for my bow, like I was gonna do like the different types of cookies. And I kind of went into like the cognition of classification and all that too.
So one thing I want to point out, and I should have pointed this out earlier, because several of it, we've also classification. And when I looked at classification, I'm going to get to it. Sorry, I'm scrolling. All right. So classification in the DRDP. Uh-oh. So look at how classification is about number and quantity. So for anyone doing something with food, and actually we could probably think about this for balls as well, but if you're doing something with quantity and ingredients, for example, Jaden, then oh, wait a minute. Am I on the right thing? No, I'm not. Never mind. Let me scooch up here. Here's classification. All right, here we go. So yes, sorting objects, comparing, matching, and sorting them. So if you have the different types of cookies and the children are going to sort by this and sort by their characteristics, is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, that will definitely work. And then I want to just point out the sense of quantity. That is also an option for anybody that's doing something with ingredients. Like, for example, characteristics of pizza. There's the dough, right? So it would be a really great experiment if children had flour and water and had to come up with their own way to use different masses of quantities to make pizza dough. And again, we wouldn't give them the recipe, they would have to figure out, okay, 1 scoop and 1 scoop. Well, what does that make? Things like that. But it sounds like, Jaden, that'll work for your first activity. Okay.
So my first activity can just be like create an ice cream shop? Or is that too like big?
Well, that's where you would eventually get to.
Maybe a menu at first.
Or just, I think maybe even like work on signs, signs. And I think you could I think you could do the surveys where they're going to survey their friends about their favorite kinds of ice cream. So then they know, what kind of ice cream do we need for our ice cream shop.
Okay.
And if it helps, Michaela, I said that for like an introductory thing, because Dr. Ty was talking about like reading like a book to them. That's just what I'm going to do for them. It's just like, hey, let's read this book.
Okay.
For the prop box?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I found it yesterday. I've got to get it from campus. I'm trying to get all the books that I have on your guys' topics. I do have one about an ice cream shop. I'm trying to find it.
Yay.
So is our focus right now filling out the bow tie?
What's that, dear?
Like, are we filling out our own bow tie and sending it to you or no?
This is you are planning. You use that bow tie, and we're actually, if everybody's feeling good, we're ready to take that bow tie now and put it into the activity plan. Okay. So let me pull up. Hold on. Let me find it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the assignments tab. Sorry, guys, I'm fighting a cold, and I was worried about how long my throat would hold out. Okay, we're going to go to the assignments tab in the curriculum course, and you're going to look under the activity plan folder, and that's where you can download your own copy of the activity plan. And one of the PowerPoints that's on this week's session, actually every slide walks through this. So if you pull up this activity plan in front of you, I'm going to pull up the slides, and then we're going to step by step go through. Now that you've got your bow, you've tied it up in a bow. Pretend that you have a cute little bow on. I told the students yesterday, back when I was your age, and it's so terrible to admit this, like big bows, we'd stick up here. I'd look like, what's Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, and oh yeah, I can't even believe that we wore these big hair bows. Anyways, I try to be obnoxious with the bows just to drill in, that you're tying all of these things up together. And who is this information important for, guys? When we're tying our concepts up with the curriculum content, who really needs to know that information?
Your principal or superintendent?
Yes. Your principal walks in and says, Miss Triplett, what is going on in this classroom? There's balls flying everywhere, and there's kids who are exploring these balls that have been cut open. And so when you really are using these highly advanced methods of teaching, and you can explain them well by demonstrating these standards, that's who wants to know. And your parents, right? Because your parents are going to be expecting, hey, where's the letter A worksheet? Why haven't you sent that home this week? All right, so you guys ready for the activity plan?
So when is this going to be due, the ICP thing?
Yeah, so here's what we're doing. So over the course of the next several weeks, you're going to plan 3. Before you even worry about 2 and 3, we're going to plan the first one. Your task today is, if we were all together, I would have you leave class, or I would have you, before you leave class, you'd have section planning for instruction completed before you walk out of class, and that's going to be my goal even when we're here online today. You then, on your own time, you're going to complete the plan, and you'll bring it to class next week, okay, which is on Monday, and you're going to do a peer review. You're going to have that plan ready so that whoever is your peer reviewer can say, oh, yep, I know exactly what the intent of this activity is. Your measures are all aligned. You've got the 3-part objectives. You're going to look for those things. Then you'll have time to make any last-minute revisions and then submit. But you won't be implementing this until after you've implemented the prop boxes. Okay? So we are doing a little pre-planning out. And it's because I want you to have time to learn how to do this. Because, man, if we take the time and we do it really well up front, when you plan 2 and 3, it's no problem. And then you can use the bow to help you brainstorm your additional activities. Next week when we get together, I'm going to introduce the last step of this, and that's where we brainstorm more activities. You're already brainstorming a lot of activities right now, and that's what happens when you start to look at that curriculum grid. You're like, oh, where do we get shoes from? Where do we buy shoes? Oh, well, now we could do this, and now we could do this. So I'm going to show you how to put all those brainstorming ideas into that curriculum grid. So today, we're going to walk through the parts. You'll put your draft together. You'll finish it up as much as you can. You'll have it reviewed in class on Monday. Then you'll submit it. And then I'll give you feedback, and then you'll be ready to go. And then in class as well, we'll go over the curriculum grid. Okay? Does that give you the picture? Roman?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so when we're creating the activity plan, the first part starts with an overview. So you can see that on your activity plan, which is at the very top. It says 1 overview. So in most cases, guys, 1 pretty nice substantial paragraph, sometimes 2 paragraphs. But again, I've said it before, not a thesis. Because this is a short form, I want you to be succinct. You're going to say, what will you do? What will the children do? What are the prerequisite skills that children need in order to be successful? And then, are there any factors that you want to think about that might impact your instruction? And that's going to change depending on the activity. So, for example, if you're doing something with Play-Doh or ingredients, a factor that might impact your instruction is just making sure you have a clear spot in the classroom, etc. Prerequisite skills. This is usually a time where I talk a little bit about, or I ask, where can we find information out about prerequisite skills? What do you think? So if children are going to sort shoes to determine sizes, what might be some prerequisite skills that they need?
Counting.
Yeah, they need to know the sizes.
Mm-hmm.
They need to understand that big and medium and small.
Yeah. So they have some sort of spatial understanding of size. They might need to know something about numbers, right? I heard someone say numbers or counting. What else might they need if they're sorting shoes with other children?
Like the concept of what makes it different than another, maybe.
So they need to be able to use visual cues to understand similarities and differences, like colors and, oh, these shoes have laces and these shoes have buckles. Okay, so they have to be able to use some expressive language. That's a skill. And if all 4 of us were working together in a group and we're sorting shoes and there's only 1 pair of shoes that light up, what might be a skill we all need? Because I want those shoes. I want to sort those. Sharing, right? We might say a skill that children need in my activity of sorting is to be able to cooperate and listen to other people, right?
Is that SED4 relationships and social interactions with peers?
Yes, it is, Kelly.
That might be one of mine.
Yeah.
For sharing balls.
Yeah, absolutely. So you see, you're just telling, you're thinking about your activity's intent, and you're thinking, what are the skills that are going to be successful? Roman, when you are very aware of your kiddo who's maybe she doesn't have difficulty, but there's something about writing that's really making her have these challenges, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About, the prerequisite skill for that. Okay, so that's usually, it's pretty straightforward, right? The intention of the activity. This should sound a lot like your bow, right? You've got your bow. Here's the concepts. Here's what we're going to learn about. Here's what children are going to do. Here's what teachers are going to do. Sounds pretty familiar, right? All right, so now we're going to go to the second section, which is planning for instruction. All right, so you're going to pick a primary area and a secondary area. Think back to the things I like activity that you did. Remember, there were 2 objectives, a primary objective and a secondary objective, and you're integrating. It's the same concept. So as you're writing this out, you're going to literally have primary area, and you're going to name that. So for this example, I chose a different standard, and I have COG 11, DRDP, COG 11, knowledge of the natural world. So I literally type in my activity plan template, primary area, DRDP, COG 11, knowledge of the natural world, which is cognition and science, right? And then I'm going to write my 3-part objective. So I've got, while sorting shoes, children identify, compare, and contrast characteristics of shoes in order to develop cognitive reasoning. That's one way to say it. Let me move over to the DRDP really quick, and I'm going to give you some really, really helpful tips. In fact, somebody yesterday said, really? We can do that? And I'm like, absolutely. That's what we should do. Okay, so let's go back to my first example, which was not classification, measurement, right? Measurement. Okay, so if I was going to write my 3-part objective for my sizes, shoes have sizes, we're going to measure shoes, I'm going to write in the overview, children are going to take off their shoes, we're going to put them in a pile, and we're going to discuss how we have different sizes of shoes, and we need to figure out what are the similarities and differences of our shoes. And then I describe how we're going to focus on sizes. So in my planning for instruction, I'm going to say that my primary area is cognition, math, and then I'm going to list COG 5, measurement. Now, that same thing earlier, and Maddie, I know your head was shaking when I said, do you see me highlighting this? So this little highlighted part, that's the actual standard. That is the child action. You can insert that right in the middle part of your objective. So if I were writing my measurement objective, I can say, while children sort their shoes, that's the situation, I can say, children show an increasing understanding of measurable properties such as size, length, etc., to quantify those properties. So you don't have to say all the words because some of these are wordy. You can squish it. And then the last part, remember, is the developmental why, because we want to be able to explain, why is sorting shoes important? Why is this activity important? In order to develop cognitive thinking, or you can say in order to develop mathematical knowledge. Either one works, because that third part is that developmental why. It's the broadest thinking. You want me to do another example real quick? So if I was going to do classification, because I know several of you are thinking about classification, we'd come up to classification. So for my same sizes, right? That's my same concept. I can now actually put Cog2, classification, on the right-hand side, and children are going to sort shoes. I'm going to have kids match shoes to their right shoe box. I'm going to have them match shoes to the shoe size, the actual numeral. So I'm like, oh, this is the one I need. So when I write the objective, I'm going to write primary area, cognition, math and science. Then I'm going to write Cog2 classification. Then I'm going to write the objective. While sorting shoes, and I can say children will compare, match, and sort objects according to their attributes in order to develop cognitive thinking. All right, so try it. Try one of your, I'm going to go get a drink of water because I'm out of water. Try writing your first objective, and I'll be right back.
Will someone listen to mine?
Yeah, go for it, girl.
Okay, so it says, while children sort pictures of types of ice cream, children will show their ability to compare and sort pictures into groups according to their attributes in order to develop cognitive thinking. I literally kind of copied what she said.
Yeah,
Slay queen,
mine sounds exactly like that too.
Okay. So I was like typing while she was talking. Like,
Me too. Or I'm writing it.
right. I'm like, I'll forget it later.
Yeah, literally.
I don't know what to do for my second standard, though. I mean, I was thinking about doing something along the lines of, like, writing since...
Yes, you have that figured out.
Yes.
Right.
I just don't know my
Secondary.
whatever that thing is called. I forgot what it's called.
The DRDP?
No, the what they're doing, the statement.
You mean your child action? Your standard?
No, not my standard. Maddie, what is the thing that you just read to us? What's the name of it?
The objective.
Yep, that's what it is.
That's what you're writing. That's what you're writing right now.
Okay.
So to write the objective, you need the DRDP standard in front of you because that'll be the easiest thing because you want it to all align. So for that one, Roman, if we were going to do writing, remember in the yellow, somewhere where the yellow is at, here it is. So if we would do emergent writing.
Yeah, I was thinking of like where it's talking about make scribble marks or simple drawings that represent people, things, or events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So you're going to have after, right? Because you're going to have them do this after they make their model, right? They've made their pizza model.
Mm-hmm.
Your situation is after making a model of a pizza, then you're going to look right here. Oh, children will write using scribbles, marks, drawings, letters to represent meaning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can I read mine?
Yes, hold on one second. And then you have the end, right? In order to develop, and you can say emergent writing or you can say language and literacy development.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Dina, what you got?
Okay, so in order to develop, like, I'm doing visual art.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to develop visual art.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's your first two parts?
Okay, so I said while creating pizza models with Play-Doh, children will engage, develop skills, and express themselves while increasing complexity and depth through three-dimensional art in order to develop visual art.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm not sure on my standard because I'm doing the survey,
Okay.
the DRDP. So I was thinking relationships and social interactions with peers, but I was also thinking communication and use of language.
Yes, you could do both of those. And let me show you one other one that everybody is probably going to use at least once.
Okay.
Let me find it. I'm going faster than my eyes really want me to. Oh, I'm looking for, hold on, I may have to go back up here. Okay, so I'm looking for documentation of communication documentation and communication of inquiry. So that's on 36, page 36. It's green. It's a cognition. This is the one. This is the standard where if you're doing charts and graphs of any kind that you would use. So the child develops the capacity to describe and record observations and investigations about objects.
So that can be my secondary one?
Yeah. I mean, actually, if you are doing your, because you're going to do your survey,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have it be your first objective because the survey is kind of the
Okay.
focusing activity. And then either one, the social emotional one that you picked or the language one that you picked, both of them will work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Yeah, so for my second one, since mine's the sorting real pictures of different types of ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
So my first one was the cognition, cog2, classification. So could my second one be a language one about would it be communication and use of language because
Yeah.
of each other? Okay.
That'd be great. And see, that's where you can really help develop a rich discussion, and even be writing, you could even be recording their words.
Okay.
And I'll tell you guys in a second why, this is a good segue, because whatever we choose for the DRDP measures for our objectives, just like we did in the Things I Like activity, we're going to screenshot those, and that's going to be part of our assessment.
Okay.
So there's always some sort of assessment evidence that we have to be able to say, well, how did they classify? So for example, in Maddie's activity, she might take pictures of how the children sorted. And then she might include those and say, based on my observation, or you might write anecdotal notes, and you're like, oh, I noticed that they were able to sort them and they had 2 piles and, here's the evidence that they gave. And so I think they're building middle. That's what you'll do for your assessment. And so it makes it really nice. I used to actually have to teach everybody how to write a rubric. And the great thing is the DRDP is a rubric along developmental continuum. Like scientists, we know, this is how children develop. So it's really great. It makes it much more reliable and valid than our teacher-made rubrics. Anybody else can
I
tell?
have a question really quick.
Uh-huh.
So we got our first objective done. When do we implement our second?
Same time. It's all happening integrated.
At one?
Mm-hmm. You're focused
Okay.
on 2 learning goals within one activity.
Okay, so with my first one being visual arts, so I wrote that, and then do I just write a whole other thing?
Another objective. Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your focus going to be on the second learning goal for the children in your activity?
I'm not sure.
So go take a look at the DRDP while you're still on so we can figure that out, because I want everybody to have 2 before we finish up today.
Well, I mean, Roman had a really good one, but I don't want to steal it from him, but the emergent writing.
Let's look up at social emotional though.
Well, I was going to do my prop box.
Uh-huh.
Going to be dramatic play, I guess, because I was gonna have a box set up as an oven, and the Play-Doh that they created, the pizza that they created out of Play-Doh, I was gonna let them cook the Play-Doh. So could that be one?
Okay, so tell me again here. You're focused on, so for your activity plan 1, they're going to be making a pizza model.
Yes,
right?
with Play-Doh.
Okay, so let's think. It's a pizza model, and you're helping to teach the characteristics.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's focus on characteristics. When we think of characteristics, that should lead you back to classification. So,
yeah, I had classification written down.
Yeah, that should be your second objective.
Okay.
Yep. Probably really should be your first one, but it's okay either way.
I can swap them around. around.
Yeah. And I say that because remember, you're teaching about size.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for classification, okay, so how would I do that with pizza? So like I understand that the visual, like what kind of activity could I do to help them?
You already have the activity.
So I'm just saying that they would like same activity and just say it also does classification.
And how is it? You tell me. How does them making a pizza model demonstrate classification?
They can classify different types of pizza.
Yeah, they're able to put them into groups according to the attributes.
They can decide, I'm going to make a pan pizza. I'm going to make a thin pizza. Or I'm going to make a pepperoni pizza. I'm going to make right?
Yeah.
So how they are classifying will have to play into what you provide as the teacher. Remember, in the bow, we do what the children will do and what the teacher will do. So if you're going to have them make models, you're going to have to supply them with real pictures of real pizza, because remember, they're not doing a memory pizza. They're not doing a pizza from memory.
Yeah.
We want it to be a representational model. So when they look at different pictures, that's when you are going to scaffold them to think about classification, right? You're going to ask those questions. What do you notice about these pizzas? There's different kinds of pizzas. What do you notice about these different kinds of pizzas? How do we sort these pizzas? Where they're really noticing the characteristics. There's another one, though, somewhere in here, but in the DRDP, it's different. You know, I was going to say you could do shapes and their characteristics, because that's where the characteristics come into play. But then it's going to become too contrived. It's not going to be focused on
So I went ahead and I wrote down my second objective.
Mm-hmm.
And creating pizza with Play-Doh, children will be able to compare, match, and sort pizza into groups according to their attributes in order to classify.
Yeah, and as long as you are helping to provide those categories. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, so they're yelling at me. Yeah.
No, I had to move Brady out. He was next door yelling at the I think they're playing Fortnite or something like that. I'm like,
oh my gosh, we have a tornado going on downstairs.
I got a whole class. I can't have you yelling, no, in the middle of it. So the trick will be, Dina, as long as in your introduction you've talked about some types of pizza, you know what I mean, so that they are actually able to classify. And their classification will come when they're naming their pizza.
Okay.
You know, the other one that would work, because I was looking for the one, there's in the Missouri Early Learning Standards, there's a standard about just observing the characteristics of non-living things. And in the DRDP, it's Cog 9. This is also another one. Anybody that when you're doing types of or characteristics of, and definitely for balls, this would be one that you would look at. Inquiry through observation and investigation. Even for cookies, if they were to investigate, well, in any of the foods that we've got going on here, if they're investigating different types of ingredients and they're interacting with that media, where they're observing what happens when they act on the objects, or even if they were observing real photos of different types of ice cream or types of sundaes or menus, you know, in the restaurant, they could observe and make these observations. And then when they carry out plans, so you can even have the children plan, you know, how are you going to do blah, blah, blah. And then they go and do it. Okay, so it sounds like everybody's in a good spot, which is awesome. So let me just take you through the next pieces, which is going to be pretty quick. And then you'll be ready to work independently. Okay, so you're going to write, oh, wait a minute. Before I tell you that, at the bottom of the, I got to find it, guys. Sorry, I cannot find, where's my, okay. At the bottom of the planning for instruction, it says, in a short paragraph, describe the learning theory you are using to guide your planning. Short paragraph, when I say short paragraph, I really mean like 3 to 4 sentences, as long as it's accurate. The only time I've ever said to students, you got to tell me more, is when it's like way too vague. You know, Piaget said, let's construct knowledge, and that's all you give me. That's not going to be enough, because remember, we've got to be able to explain to our principals and other stakeholders why this is important. So I will give you an example. After I have my 2 primary my primary and my secondary area written, right after that, I would write something about Vygotsky. So I'm going to choose for shoes, my shoes activity, I'm going to choose Vygotsky. And I'm going to say, I'm applying Vygotsky's theory of social cultural development, because we're going to be using the shoes that belong to the children. The shoes come from their homes, and so that relates to their background. We're also going to do a shared activity, and Vygotsky believed that children learn from social interactions, period. So I just really want you to tell me in your own words, if you need to use a resource to help kind of jog your memory of, okay, what do I want to say about Piaget here? Or what did I want to say about Bronfenbrenner here? Or what did I want to say about Dewey here? It's fine. If you're paraphrasing a resource, then you will cite it. If you're talking from your own words like I just did, then you just write it. Okay? Does that make sense?
Did she freeze?
Oh.
Yes. There you go.
Am I unfrozen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you guys didn't freeze. I could still hear you. Okay, everybody, does that make sense about the theory part? Yeah. Okay, so then teaching strategies. For the teaching strategies, one thing I'm going to recommend, because most all of you have a teaching strategy that you've selected for your goals, right? So here's where you can maximize. Like if you selected quality of feedback for a goal, I would have it in my teaching strategies. So one of my teaching strategies would be, I'm going to provide quality of feedback. I'm going to scaffold children when they sort shoes. I'm going to give them encouragement. Like Roman, you probably are always going to say, I'm going to give encouragement to, my focus children, because I know one of them really needs that extra support. So I'm going to use clear feedback. So you're really literally just telling me something like that. And notice how in what I just said, I also took care of the second bullet point. How will these strategies support child objectives? For this activity, that's my demonstration activity. So if I did quality of feedback as one instructional strategy, my other one would be open-ended questions. And so this is where I would say, I'm going to use open-ended questions to guide children to learn about sizes. And when I use these open-ended questions, that will support children learning about my 2 objectives. Pretty simple, right? Okay. Materials and safety. Here's where you just want to brainstorm all the possible issues that could come up with regards to safety. So for example, since everybody has something to do with food, you got to check food allergies, if you decide to bring in some real ingredients or something like that. For Play-Doh, what might be a safety issue with Play-Doh?
Them eating it.
Right. So you want to make sure you list that you will provide non-toxic Play-Doh, that you will, talk about how we're going to use the Play-Doh to create our visual representations. We don't put it in our mouth, right? So you're just briefly talking about the materials and the resources. If you have your scavenger hunts, that can help you know what's available in the classroom to use as your so that's, again, pretty straightforward. Then you have the developmental needs. This is one that you might have to think just a little bit on in terms of how the activity is going and what supports you might need for your child. So this is where we're really practicing some accommodations. So for example, when we think about an accommodation, sometimes we think about only a child with special needs gets an accommodation, but that's not the case. We're working with young children who have a variety of individual differences. I'm going to go back to Roman's example of his child who's writing, or even earlier, I think Sarah maybe mentioned I think one of you mentioned like, oh, my child is writing in circles, right? So we're supporting the child where they're at on the developmental continuum. So does that mean they need extra time? Does that mean they need a different seating position? Does it mean that they need to have a visual cue? So you'll have to come up with what is the differentiation. Now, yesterday, I had a student who said to me, well, I have a student, she's really high and she can do everything and I'm not going to have to accommodate her. Can you guess what I said?
Increase of rigor.
Yeah, exactly. I said, so what we have to do is we have to think about how to challenge and bump her up. So where do you look for that? So I'm going to give you an example. If you have someone like that, when you look at the DRDP, you're going to look, I've just pulled that up on to make sure you guys can see it. You're going to look over here all the way on the right-hand side. You want to get kiddos, by the end of preschool, we expect kids to be building later or integrating earlier. And guess what? This integrating earlier is what starts on the kindergarten DRDP. So you can just talk about how you'll scaffold and how you'll challenge them. We always want to be supporting the learning of our children no matter what. Okay. All right, assessment. Oh, yes, Maddie?
So one of my students is an ELL
Yes.
student, and my activity kind of is differentiated because he can't recognize any sort of letters. Like he knows A and that's it.
Right.
So with the pictures, there's no words. So would the differentiation be adding like titles or like names to the pictures?
Yeah, vocabulary cards. That'd be great. That'd be really great. And so then and that would be for all learners. Hold on one second, guys. I'm sorry. So yes, that's exactly right. For those English language learners, and actually for all preschoolers and kindergartners who are learning print, if you can do those vocabulary cards. And let me see here. I can pull up an example really quick. Let me think of where it's at. You guys have seen this before because it was in an earlier... let me find it here. Of course, since I want it. Yeah, that's not it. I was trying to pull up my example of some vocabulary cards, and just make sure, the picture's first and then the label is clear, really nice printing, black, like a black marker is really good for that. I can also send you, or I would just recommend in the text, there is a section on accommodations, and it helps you think about, sometimes you're just modifying the time or the assistance. Sometimes it's going to be the child's going to sort with assistance. You're going to have to help them sort. But for writing, we're just going to scaffold them where they're at. And part of that is us understanding that circles and marks is actually success, even though they're not maybe approximating letters like we're thinking they should be. Remember, that's okay, because that's on that continuum of writing. Okay, and then the assessment. So when I review your plans, there's 3 things that I look at right away. The first thing I do is I read your overview. Then I look at your planning, because whatever you tell me in the overview should match the planning. And then the third thing I look at is the assessment, because all those things are aligned. The trick is, guys, you've got it easy. And when I say easy, you're picking a DRDP measure as the central focus of your objective. That same DRDP measure is going to be your assessment tool. Then all you have to do is state what your evidence is. So by assessment evidence, right, if your standard was sociodramatic play, what are some pieces of evidence that you would put with that standard? I can't hear you, Michaela.
Recordings?
Yeah, recordings. Whether it's an actual audio recording or a video or
the notes of them talking. Okay.
That's it, guys. If you have an objective that has anything to do with language, you're probably going to have a language sample or an audio sample.
So like mine with her talking, like communication.
Yes.
And if it's the survey, would it just be a work sample?
Yeah.
Like her survey?
Yeah. Yep. And if you're focused on the process, so that's the other thing. Just FYI, when kids survey for the first time, they do not do one-to-one correspondence well. Unless on the continuum of one-to-one correspondence, they've already got, one vote means one. Otherwise, they're going to put tallies wherever. And you know what I say? That's fine. And the reason why it's fine is because it's about the process. The more they survey, the more accurate their collections will be. But you can guide them. Yes.
I have a question about that, because during snack time, they kind of do a survey type thing. Like they'll have a question up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So could I have the student do it that way?
Yes, but you'll have them do it, have them have their own little clipboard, have their own little clipboard. We at Great Beginnings, we have taken groups so that they have more to survey than just, because like some classrooms only have 5 kids. So we'll go across the hallway and survey other students or survey other teachers. And at that point in time, we're not even, like Tanner, I remember when we did a survey, he's like, should I be worried about this one-to-one correspondence? And I'm like, no, because it's the act, right? It's them processing and learning it. Then you have data. You all know it's not reliable data. They don't know that, and it's okay. It's okay right then and there. The older they would get, the more that data would become accurate. And then you can use those data for different activities. Like, for example, in a real shoe project, this was a student of mine who's now a principal, but Nick did a shoe project with 2nd graders. Now, of course, 2nd graders have more sophisticated thinking, right? So those children surveyed all of the teachers. They knew the teacher's favorite shoes. They knew the types of shoes they liked and wore. They knew their sizes. And then when they went to create their shoe store for their culminating project, they actually solicited for the styles and types of shoes that the staff would be interested in actually wearing. So that's how how you would gradually move with different age groups to use the data. For our preschoolers and our kindergartners, we're going to have them count. We're going to have them learn about tallying, where they get groups of 5. So when you first tally for the first time, it's just tally marks. Then the more you would do this, then you would introduce the concept of groups of 5 and say, okay, when we survey today, we're going to look for putting our groups together. But that's on down the road, right? All right, so great questions. At this point in time, I would say I want you to just spend time working out this plan. I mean, this is where if we were in class together right now, I would just let you work, and you would be able to ask me questions about it, and then we would be finished. So the main thing is come to class on Monday with your draft. You don't have to print a copy out for your teaching partner or your partner that I pair you up with. As long as you're okay with them, looking at your computer. If you want to bring a hard copy, you can and share it that way. I will bring a template for review. And so we'll start off doing the peer review first. And then you'll have some time to make some notes of anything that you need to change. And then the second part of class, we'll look at that summary grid so you can understand how to continue brainstorming activities. That way you'll walk off or in class with a picture of, these are all the possibilities of how I could have taught this project if I had, 4 weeks that I was the teacher every day. Okay? So any other questions for me? You're working on the DAP assessment. I extended that in case you needed some more time. But for the most part, you want to go ahead and submit that. Make sure you just attach any of the evidence and your anecdotal notes in that. So you have that, and then you're just working on this for Monday.
Wait, so when did you extend the DAP to? I thought it was due Sunday.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so also next Wednesday, we don't really have any particular planned implementation, but I would strongly advise you to find an information text on your topic, and you can just read a book. Enjoy reading a book with your children on your topic. And that way it keeps the momentum, because you've kind of built up to this part, and then there will be a lull between you bringing your prop box in the next week. So that would be my only suggestion. I do have some books that I'll try to bring in on Monday. I know I have some ball books, Kelly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Email me if you get stuck or send me a text. But I think you've got it. All right? Be safe. Don't try to go anywhere. Or if you do, just be safe.
We have a night class, so.
Oh, you do. All right.
Wait, we have that today?
Yeah, she hasn't canceled it.
Well, no.
Oh, not that class. Our math class.
Oh.
No, we don't have that other one today. She canceled that one.
And Jaden's acquisition class. That was Monday.
Is there anything you need from me as of right now?
You
Nope.
talking to me?
Yeah.
I think we have our list. You got your list. You know what you're working on? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, everybody. I'll see you Monday morning in March. All right. Have a great rest of the day.
Me too. Bye.
Bye.